Welcome to the 94th episode of the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we're closing in on a century. And we have with us today, Johnny. How are you, mate?
Top notch, mate. Yeah. No Tottenham ruining my weekend. And Poch isn't going to get the glory. So another... Yeah. How are you anyway, Jim?
I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, doing all right. I was a bit disappointed that Wolves didn't turn up against Arsenal. Yeah, but apart from that, can't complain. Deej, how are you, mate?
I'm doing all right. I disagree with Tottenham not ruining my weekend. I think the Udogie news was tragic. But other than that, doing as good as one can.
Good stuff. And Stu, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with DJ. The Destiny news is awful. It's just affecting one of my three countries at the Euros this summer.
And we have some of you might have seen Dan before. He came on one of our first ever episodes. We've got Dan joining us today. How are you, Dan?
Oh, I'm very good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me back. And hope you guys are all good.
No, good to have you on. And Dan's a kind of part-time football coach as well. So it's great to have him on. We're going to be discussing today, going over your questions we never got around to going over on the last episode, but then also going into the tactical side of Ange. So what we want to look at is Ange getting fair or unfair criticism in the fact people keep saying there's no plan B? Is he actually adapting? Have Arteta and Pep changed their tactics and moved on from this whole kind of inverted fullback philosophy to something different, whereas we're not doing that for a reason? And just kind of going over all those kind of areas and really looking into it. But we'll start with your questions from the last pod that we didn't get around to reading. So Chang, good to see you again. You asked which players are certified certain first 11 starters for next season from the current crop of players out of our rooster. So, go with you, Dan. Do you want to answer that one? Who do you think? Who of any?
It's going to be Romero and Van der Ven, isn't it? Mm-hmm. No, those two have to be. And then it's a really difficult one because when you look at the combination of the midfielders that we haven't figured out yet which combination works. So do any of them really deserve a starting position? I'd argue Bentancur, but then you could also argue Maddison. But they've both had so much in form through injury recovery coming back. It's difficult to say they both fully deserve. The only one I would probably say out the midfielder combination we have would be Sarr. I think he definitely deserves a position. And you look at the front three, again, we've got so many options. Have all of them really cemented a position where you can say guaranteed they would do? The only one, but unfortunately now he's injured, would be Udogie because he hasn't got any competition. So I would say actually probably out of the ones we have right now, Romero, Van der Ven, I'd say would probably be the only two I would say to be guaranteed starters next season.
And Vicario, of course.
And Vicario.
Yeah.
I would add a couple more in there. I think our entire back four is basically going to be nailed on starters. Because I don't see us upgrading on Pedro Porro in the summer, and I don't think that he's going to be displaced. So I think that he's going to be. I think the back four plus goalie is going to stay the same. I think Maddison is probably going to be a nailed on starter next season, barring any significant injury. Because while we do have a lot of players in the midfield that can do a job, I think he's the most unique of the ones that we're planning on keeping, especially assuming we sell Lo Celso, and looking at the way that we've used him this season, I'm assuming that we are going to do that. And then for our front three, assuming no major drop in form, I think the only one that's nailed on is I think we'll find a spot for Son somewhere in the front three. I think he'll continue to be a major part of our team. He's had, I guess, a bit of a rough patch recently, but if you look at the season as a whole, and he's been played basically everywhere, and he's put up numbers. So I don't think that there's any good reason to be finding a current replacement for him. Obviously, looking for a long-term solution for replacing him is something that we will be looking to do, if not this summer, then certainly next. But I don't think that that's something that we're going to be prioritizing with. In my opinion, other areas in the squad that we can strengthen further.
So now on to the next question. If we could make, this is also from Chang, so you can make one immediate Marquee signing. Who would it be? Not who would it be, but what position would you like that Marquee signing to be?
If it's going to be a Marquee signing, I don't see it's got to be either a left wing or a number 9. In my opinion, I think if it's going to be I think realistically there are two options, 2 roads we go down, and I think it's either we grab a big number 9 or we grab, I think, basically just Nico Williams. That guy's insane. I don't know if he'll ever leave Spain, and I would understand completely if he didn't. But if he does, I hope he ends up here. And if not him or someone of his build, I think we just go for a big number 9, someone in the, I guess, Richarlison mold, but better.
So I'm going to continue to prod this bear until everyone agrees with me, because no one ever does. Everyone keeps telling me Son is undroppable, but everyone always says we need a number 9 and a left winger more than anyone else. Positions.
I disagree.
I said or.
So not everyone.
Son's going to play in one of them, and then the other one's the signing is going to play in the other position. That's kind of.
I think we need a 6.
I
agree. Yeah, Dan thinks a 6. Johnny, what do you think? Most important, you can make one Marquee signing in a position. What position?
What does Marquee mean that somebody is spending a load of money on?
We're just slapping down 100 million quid on one position.
I don't really want to do that necessarily anyway.
Yeah, but we're doing it. Levy's found some oil money. Well, he's been successful. He's got 100. He's just slapping it down on one position.
Okay. So that's pretty plausible. I would say that if you're going to go for a Marquee, then it's a number 6, because your money's going to go a lot further. Because strikers cost a bloody fortune, and so that's a really important rule, because there really isn't, Højbjerg presumably is going to leave, so Bissouma hasn't really got anyone else, because Bentancur can do a job, but he's not really his position. So I think that it's going to be probably a 6, but I think we really need a striker as well. But let's get bang for our buck. I'll get the 6.
I agree we need a 6 and a 9, but I just think we're scoring goals. The problem is we're conceding them, so I would put a 6 before a 9.
Yeah,
and there's too much detachment from the defence to the attack again, because our midfield combination breaks down, and we've not got anyone out of the 5-6 choices that has solidified a position. And we all thought it was going to be Bissouma, but he's been so fluctuating in form that he's not solidified that position. And of course, Bentancur's injury, and he's been up and down coming back from injury, which is understandable. Then we thought, Sarr as well, and we just haven't really found anybody. And the only one that's actually done a decent job is our super sub Højbjerg at the minute. When he comes on, he seems to just lock it down for us and do that job what we need in front of the back two when our fullbacks have gone and we've only got Romero and Mickey sitting there, and we need someone there, and we haven't got that. So 100%, I think we need a 6 just to solidify that position, own that, create that spine for us, and have that starting position that we need. That we know is that the first name on the team sheet every week.
I'll tell you what, Dan, let's use your knowledge as well for our listeners today to do a bit of a fun thing. Can you tell us what's the main difference between a 6, an 8, and a 10, and who you would like ideally in each of those roles for Spurs? You can take other players in the Premier League as well. Who do you think the best at those roles as well?
Okay. Oh, that's a tough one. But the thing what I love about a 6, that was my position. I always played there. It was my job. It's an easy position to play. You sit there, you win the ball, you play a pass, you let your creative players go do the job. That was my job. I was never creative. I was never overly skillful, but I could tackle, I could win a ball, and I could pass it. So that's all I ever did. And I loved that role. But it protects the back two, and it gives them security. It lets your fullbacks can go when they need to, and you can sit there and pick it up. And you look at Rodri, for example, at City, it's phenomenal in that position. But then when you look at who we've got, kind of fluidity in and out of there, no one really does that job. And that's why I know he gets some stick, but I love it when Højbjerg comes on, especially now he's trying to prove a point because he wants to leave. So he's kind of upped his game a little bit compared to how he was last season when he was run ragged in that position by himself. When Conte just had the 2. Now he's trying to prove a point, and he does a good job there. So we definitely need, that kind of 6 sitting there. The 10, the creative player that sits behind the striker. Again, what we're missing in this position is Maddison doing what Kane used to do, dropping off too deep. So we've not got no forward runs off the striker. So the 9 and the 10, the 9's isolated. The 10's not doing anything because the 10's going deep trying to create. So we've got a creative player sitting in a play where we need that creativity, but we need him driving forward into the box, making those runs. Whereas Maddison's not really doing that for us. And there's not really too many in the Premier League right now that play that kind of 10 role because of, see, in coaching, I don't like to do the 6, the 10, the 8, personally, the 9. I like to do fluidity. We've spoken about this before. You have roles and responsibilities. So if you have someone sitting, you have the 10, you have your box to box, they should all be fluid. So if the 10 does drop, then the 8 should be pushing up. If the 6 has to go, then the 8 has to sit back. So you're not locked in a position. So it creates that fluidity. And that's what City do so well. I know I was going to kind of move on later on and talk about the difference. But if you look at City, they're so fluid. When you've got the 5 channels, the pitch is divided up, and you can see every single area of the pitch is covered by a player at all times, no matter who it is. Even if it's one of the 4 centre-backs coming in to cover positions, they're all rotating and fluid. Now, of course, we're learning to be in those positions. Whilst we're learning, we need players sitting in there. I love Sarr as an 8. I think he's a great box-to-box player. I love Maddison as a 10, but I actually prefer Kulu as a 10. I love Kulusevski sitting as a 10. I think he's so dynamic. He's so creative. He picks the ball up so well. The only thing he doesn't do is run off the striker enough. So we kind of miss those forward runs. But yes, it's a tough one, really. Who's the best 10 in the Premier League right now? It's hard to really say. To be honest, I'd like to see Son even dropping back as a 10 with his forward run sometimes, maybe playing off Richarlison. But then has he got the energy now with his age to keep up that creativity we need from him, with the work ethic from the 3? We haven't got that. I love Rodri.
Yeah,
I love him. Sitting there for City, he's been such a good signing for City. And when we said about the Marquee signing for Spurs, look at the money they spent on him. Look at how well he's done and how much he's cleaned up that position for them. They bought Phillips in as a backup, and he's sat on the bench for 2 seasons now. Phillips not doing absolutely anything at all because he's been so good there, and he does such a good job there, winning everything for him.
And that's why the smelly lot down the road spent so much on Declan Rice. It's such an important position now with the way everyone's going. And I think we've heard it before, haven't we, that Pep's methodology, it's got that overlap with Ange's, in that you don't have those defined positions. You understand a system and a philosophy. You're not in training just being ground on, here's your little zone, you stay there and you do this. It's very much understand the principles of this team. And like you said, then it's just fluid movement. And all their players, you watch them, and you just think, God, you're all just so versatile. You're all so technically good. Like you're just, and you can see, I hate to say it, you can see that's what Arteta's trying to do with the players he's signing as well. They're all very technically gifted footballers that can rotate around him. And that's why he wanted someone like Havertz as well. And probably what Ange saw a little bit in Werner maybe was a bit like, he's versatile, he can play across the front 3, and he's actually available. But we will jump into the next question. So, from Ben White, Royal and Davies keep as popular and reliable backup options or aim to move them on? Maybe not the highest priority, but I do feel like we need a proper backup wing back, essentially is what he's saying there. Do you guys agree end of the season we should be selling those guys, looking to get true wing backs in?
Thanks,
John,
Ben White, for the question. I would love to upgrade on, I think Ben Davies, I've made my position on Ben Davies very clear, and that he is good at being okay. And honestly, at this point, we have bigger fish to fry, in my opinion. I think that he is I think he's a decent backup. We'll obviously see for the rest of this season. And my opinion may change if he drops a couple of clankers in a row, but I think in general, I think he's as pretty much as good of a squad player as you can ask for in today's market. If you want to buy someone that's going to put out performances like him while also being willing to sit on the bench for 70-80% of a season, I don't even know if that player exists. For Emerson, I think I'd definitely be more willing to upgrade on him, just because I don't think that the way that he plays fits what Postecoglou wants our wingbacks to do, especially the way that he's kind of changed the way that the right wing back works to maximize Porro's strengths. And I think that's the issue between having Emerson as a backup, is because I think Emerson is really good at the things that Porro is bad at. And I think that he is really bad at the things that Porro is good at. And because our system is trying to maximize Pedro Porro, it ends up kind of tacitly like minimizing Emerson, which is unfair to him. I think he's like a fantastic player, like, and he'll do great somewhere else. But I just think that the system is moving further and further away from one that he can thrive in.
It's like he can push up the 6 kind of area, but then as soon as he goes beyond that, it's like rabbit in the headlights for Emerson. It's just lost. But I think he's a good option to rotate with Porro depending on what's happening in the game. But we definitely need to upgrade because we've got no rotation at all, really.
Put Emerson at the 6.
Not only that, but there's no rotation. But it's like you were saying earlier, Dan, about like Højbjerg's got a little extra impetus to the fact that he's looking for a move and so on. This is the same thing. If Porro's got some competition, then he's hopefully going to also raise his performances, because it's any player that's nailed on to start, unless it's the keeper, it's not good for anybody, especially the team.
Yeah. Okay, so basically keep Gentle Ben and look to offload Emerson is the kind of summary. Agree with that there. So, Stu, I'll pass this one to you. Do you believe Gio deserves to start ahead of Maddison?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this in the last pod when we were...
And that's from Fans to Spurs guy. Sorry, carry on.
About who we should keep. I think he's been pretty harshly treated since he came back from injury. I think Maddison's been particularly poor since he came back from injury, and I think he should have been subbed a lot earlier in most games rather than giving Gio 2 minutes at the end, 3 minutes at the end, especially as Gio seems to do a good job. But I don't think anyone's really ever criticized his performances when he's played. His problem has been availability. He's always injured. But, he's shown in Argentina he's got the skills. And I think when he's played for us, he's, he puts his effort in. He does have the skills. He is able to pull a pass and score a goal. And I do think he's been harshly treated, and I expect him to leave in the summer.
I think he'd mentally checked out Spurs a long time ago, though. He's been a professional and done a good job when he's come on and not been injured, but he's clearly not overly happy here. And there was reports in there that he's just a bit of a isolated character. These things are true, but that would imply maybe he's just, something's just, you just don't enjoy it. We've all probably done that before, moved to a different part of the country or a different country and thought it's just not home for me. Rick has done a number of questions. We answered some of these on the last pod, Rick, but there's one here that is interesting. But essentially, we discussed whether we need a better 6 or not, and the answer is yes. But anyone got any suggestions on who that 6 would be?
I think that's my problem, is when I look around, all of the good 6s we kind of missed the boat on this a little bit. I think that over the past 2 or 3 summers, there's just been like a spending spree for players like young, talented, like deeper line players like Tchouaméni and Camavinga just are the 2 off the top of my head. Even people like Rice, just like all of these like talented 6s are being snapped up by teams who realize they need a 6 to play in this kind of more forward position. So if we get a 6, it's going to probably need to be our Marquee signing, because that's going to be the next position that gets priced out in a way. That position is so unbelievably important that it's going to be one that we're going to have to buy. We're going to have to spend probably more money than most people would like to spend on a player. It's going to be a player probably a bit younger than we'd like, and we cannot afford to get it wrong, because we saw what happened last time we missed on a midfielder. So I don't have one off the top of my head. That's something that I'll definitely look into as the transfer window gets closer, because realistically right now, it doesn't matter. We're so far away from anything materializing that I can take my time, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have any great ideas, unfortunately. Everyone's so damn expensive these days.
Well, let's hope our chairman can find that investor.
I've got one.
Go
on. Ederson, Atalanta's Ederson.
Okay.
I do remember us being linked with him in the January window. I'd be interested to see if that was just paper talk or if that's something that we're looking for in the summer. I'm not super familiar with him, so I'll have to give him a watch.
24 years old, valued at 30 million euros. So he kind of fits the age profile of what we like. Apart from that, I couldn't tell you anything about the guy. But Stu says he's good and Stu wanted Vicario. So
he's in my fantasy football team this year. So
66 appearances in the last 18 months implies he's not very injury prone, which is good. So yeah, get him in. Get him in
as soon as he gets here. We've seen
he plays for Atalanta, which also play a very attacking style of football, which I think would be a good fit with us.
Yeah.
So did he play with Kuti then?
With who? Sorry, with Kuti.
I
think. No, I think he only joined them last year. So I think he joined after Kuti left.
It's just kind of nice for the first time in a long time being a Spurs fan. You kind of trust their recruitment process a little bit. That you say, okay, we need this position, but you kind of, with the players they've brought in recently, are just hoping they'll find, the Mickey van der Ven of the number 6 for us. That I don't think anyone expected him to be having a season he's had, and be to make the difference what he's made for us, and hopefully they can do the data, what they're doing, and then find the right fit for the player they need, right profile, and might not even be a marquee signing. We might not think it's the hundreds of millions, or because that's what like Dee just rightly said. They're pricing that position, and that's not our model. So hopefully they can go find those gems, like you just said there of Ederson in Atlanta. Like, hopefully they can go find these little gems around Europe somewhere, around the world somewhere, even in the UK somewhere that fits in for what we're looking for perfectly and fits our systems. So, yeah, I kind of trust it. I'm excited for the summer because I trust what they're doing now for the first time in years. So it's actually nice to look forward to a window.
Yeah, I think the challenge we have there is we go into every window now. Because when we had Conte, we weren't playing in the same formation or style that Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, all the other richest clubs played. So we weren't often going after the same profile of player. But now with Ange, I feel like because thankfully we're playing the same overlapping philosophies as the most elite coaches in the world, there is a bit of competition for the same type of player. Obviously we're never going to be. But fortunately, a lot of those clubs they've made their marquee signings now, haven't they? Arsenal have got Rice, City have got Rodri. Is it McAllister for Liverpool? Like they've all spent big on those positions that we're looking at, including their strikers as well. So might free one. But
I think the Euros will be interesting as well because that's gonna put a lot of light on a few players that will shine well, and that'll make fans buzzing for certain players. It always does, someone has a good tournament and eyes light up. So, that could open a few eyes and a few doors for a lot of players coming into the Premier League that we wouldn't maybe have not expected before. So could change a lot of things as well.
Didn't Zakoro have a good World Cup?
He did. I was just thinking of him. We signed him based on the good World Cup. And Sissoko, that turned Levy's eyes, didn't it? And he was a Christmas present to Posh that turned into a big box in his office. That's funny. But just before we dive, in a second, we're just going to dive and discuss the tactical details. But I wanted to go around the room just to finish off the transfer bit. If you could make your dream statement signing this summer, any position, out of anyone, who would it be? Johnny, go on, mate. You go first. I try to be like relatively realistic, but you can push the boundaries a bit. Don't be like De Bruyne.
Shit.
In
terms of
he's past it anyway.
In terms of the rumors and the soundings that you hear in the usual channels, like there's quite a lot of talk about Eze, and I do think that he would be class. And we need he's more on the left side of things. So I think that's definitely a position where we would benefit from strengthening. I guess then that's going to pacify you, Jim, because then Sonny's definitely got some competition as well. And I'm really worried about the I'm worried about the striker position, but like he's the one that's the most obvious to me. Who's got like you want somebody with Premier League experience, ideally, I suppose. It's quite a big box to tick. We've had so many forward players come in from overseas and they've not hit the ground running. But like as Dan said, the recruitment is now so much more. There's so many kind of checks and balances and people making kind of joined up thinking in there. So whatever happens, I would feel the same in terms of having faith in that. And but if I'm just going to come in with my really ignorant, easy, just off the hip fan kind of one, I would go for him because I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head that probably would be keen to come. And I think like Spurs are unquestionably a big jump up from Crystal Palace, but I think he's more than capable of doing a great job for us. So I'll go for him.
Anyone else on Eze? Because I'll save you the time. So I'm exactly the same view as Johnny, especially after that ridiculous goal.
I was so excited at the idea of him coming, pushing Maddison as well.
Yeah, yeah, agree. Dan or Deej, either of you, someone else? Semi-realistic dream.
Realistic.
Rodri, all day, realistic. Pop him in. Or Jude Bellingham.
Not
that's a good
Grealish,
shout.
guys.
Yeah, I'm glad no one said Grealish. Can we also discuss that? Like, does anyone
want to? Don't lend credence to the idea of Jack Grealish coming here. There are so many reasons why it won't work. Not the least that I don't think he's all that great. He's been forced out of City essentially in like a season. They looked absolutely terrible in the Champions League until he came off, and then Doku was the catalyst behind their potential comeback that did end up falling short. But man, they just I don't want to. Instead of talking about Jack Grealish, I will talk about who I would like, and I've already mentioned his name on this podcast. But man, if we could get Nico Williams, that's kind of pushing it in terms of like the realistic, I think. But I think he's still definitely gettable. I think we're a step up in terms of like I guess stature, but then obviously he has his like the hometown connection, the home club connection is something that you can't overlook. So I'm not going to say that it's like an obvious choice for him to come here, but just the way that he plays reminds me, he puts in the performances week in, week out that are like the best Brennan Johnson performances. So if we have the best Brennan Johnson performances on the left and the right, like that is such a scary prospect. And I think that having that player that can just take on a wingback and just laugh at him and then move past him, and have someone who can do that as consistently as he seems to be able to do, is just what I think is the thing that would bring Ange ball to the next level. So that's why I would go with him.
I've got one if we're not able to convince him to leave his brother and his hometown. Again, to keep Jim happy, a rival for Son, Rafael Leao.
And just because I don't think Son needs a rival because he doesn't try. He's the best attitude in the squad, best finisher in the squad. I just think he's not a natural in the number 9 position that he's currently playing. So I'd like to see someone come in that, like, I still see Son as like someone that could, like you mentioned, Dan, like he could play in multiple roles and be this like super impactful, versatile key player in the squad that kind of like you put in multiple things and you really like scare the opposition by like, oh my God, they're bringing Son on again. But I just don't think he should be like building the front line around him as number 9. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But
here's a question on Son then. If he's still captain next season and we bring a number 9 in, he's naturally going to push over to the left, which means that position probably won't be strengthened. Then what happens? Yeah. It all depends on who the captaincy coach. I wouldn't be surprised though to see captaincy move next season. I wouldn't be surprised to see it move. But if Son is still captain next season, then that's one of the front 3 locked in. Whether it's a 9 or the left, it's locked in again. It all depends on who Ange picks. And he's such a great leader, man, human. They all talk so highly of him. Will he be picked again? Most probably. But then will that affect us tactically? Potentially.
I mean, yeah, but I think in the same way that we've kind of adjusted, we've adjusted, I think, Ange's system to max. Like I said earlier, we're maximizing Pedro Porro's strengths, and someone who's not necessarily like a typical like wing back or fullback. He's definitely more of a wing back in my eyes. And we've done kind of the same thing with Udogie, where we're maximizing his ability to like carry the ball, make those dangerous runs, and have the stamina to go up and down the pitch over and over and over and over and over again. So I think that if we had a consistent position for Son, I think that the system would have shifted more to like play to his strengths. But because Richarlison has been in and out of the squad and has had form issues at the beginning of the season, I think that Ange hasn't been able to like nail down, because like a system that makes Sunshine as a left winger and Sunshine as a 9. I think those are two very different systems, and I think that because he's had to play in both so consistently, like, you know, he's kind of like, I think he's played the 9 more, but he's definitely been out on the left a non-zero amount. I think that we haven't been able to like nail down that a system that like maximizes his strength in one position. So we've kind of had to like balance it between the two. So I think that if we strengthen one position, we can strengthen that position knowing that we'll have Son in the other position. We know he'll know how he wants to use Son in that position, and that'll allow him to find the specific things that he needs to find in that other one. That's why I like Nico Williams so much, or a player like him, because Son is not good in the air, but that doesn't matter if all the balls are like cutbacks from the byline, which is something that like a player like Brennan Johnson is providing when he's beating a man, something that Nico Williams could provide on the other side when he's beating a man. And then you just play it back in, and I don't care. I don't think there's anyone I'd rather have in the middle of the box where it's a one-touch finish. I think that Son is just he's still one of the best finishers in the world, and I think that that's something that we can definitely continue to maximize
there's plenty of deficiencies in the squad which makes Son's job more difficult. I think that's very fair to say. But Dan, this is a question we're keen to cover. We're going to throw you under the bus a little bit with it. Do you feel, looking at it from like a coach's lens, there's things that Arteta and Pep and Klopp, you know, because we look at them as the pedestal managers of the Premier League, and Ange has come in, and we're excited because we think he's the guy who's on that level of those guys that can, with the right players, get us there. But he gets criticism for the lazy narrative around no plan B. But are those other managers, in your view, doing something tactically more innovative because they all play front foot, attacking football and press hard pitch, right? But they don't get the same criticism that Ange does, that he concedes, you know, quickly on the counter when we lose the ball. Are they doing something differently, in your opinion, or is this due to just unfair reputation and worse players, or is it a tactical thing Ange needs to get his head around?
I think it's simply because they've had the time, they've built the systems, they've built the fluidity, everyone knows the roles, everyone knows the job. So when you pop in a player like Declan Rice, you know, or Havertz, you're bringing them in because you're not having to mass recruit. You're bringing in one or two. They slot into the system easily. They pick it up easy because everyone's singing from the same song sheet. The trouble we have right now is, for the past, 4 or 5 years, everything has always changed slightly. You know, we had Jose one way, then we had Conte one way with 2 different formations, same style, low block counter, but 2 different formations. So then the recruitment changed for Conte. Now we've got Ange. And it's not much different because it's still one way, you know, the high press, halfway line, inverted fullbacks, go attack with a front 6, you know, so it's very, very attacking football, but it's still one style. He just needs time. However, so do I think his tactics need to change? No. Does he need a plan B? No. What he does need, and this is what I want to see more, what really frustrates me, is there's not enough in-game management personally. Now, I know people will say, well, he does change personnel here, change personnel there. But, you know, as Deej rightly said at the beginning, you know, the difference between Porro and Emerson. One does one thing really, really well. One does another thing really, really well. Now, if that element of Porro has been taken out of the game completely, and we're losing, we're conceding early, they're hitting that channel constantly because Porro is weak back there, then get him off, rotate him. He's only going to improve and develop if he's being challenged. You're not doing a good enough job there. You're off. Bring Royal in. Lock down that position. Then it will strengthen other areas of the pitch because then we'll be able to get up in other areas. And that's the only thing that frustrates me with Ange. He's done it a couple of times, half-time changes, and we've seen, where he's made 2 or 3 subs at half-time. It's great, but there's been some games where, we're watching, and you're like, come on, make a change. And then, like Stuart pointed out, with Lo Celso, the poor guy doesn't get a look in, and Maddison will have a terrible, might have a great 20 minutes and have a terrible, 50 minutes in the middle, and then Lo Celso doesn't even get a look in. Decky doesn't even get pulled into the middle, and that's the only thing I think frustrating. But look, I love Ange. I think what he's doing is right. I think that when you're trying to embed and build a system, he's doing the right thing. And although from a coach's perspective, I think that the right thing is to change and adapt depending on who you're playing. However, he's trying to build something, and the only way to build that is with consistency. And you have to take the knocks sometimes, and you have to take the defeat sometimes, and you have to take, because you're going to learn more from losing games. You're going to learn more from conceding games than you're ever going to learn from winning and running over teams, ever. We develop it in football constantly, whether it's academy football, grassroots football. Your team goes out and storms another. You're not going to teach these kids anything compared to when they've lost, and they can learn from their mistakes. They can learn from how they've lost the game. So when we are losing, we're learning at the minute. And I think we've all jumped the gun massively because how Ange was at the start of the season. So we've got so excited. It's like he's been here for years, and it's like, this is us. This is our style. This is our formation. This is how we play. We all love it, and we all want to see more of it. But as you rightly so point out, Jim, very, very often in the chat, is that he's new. Relax. We're building a project because it's fun and good to watch. I just want to see more in-game management from him. And if something isn't working, change that system, change that to try and win the game. That's the only thing I would like to see a little bit more of.
Johnny, were you about to say something then as well?
No, I mean, I agree with everything Dan's just said, and I suppose it comes down to, we've had the different styles of managers, negative managers until between Poch and Ange, and like exactly the point about Arteta. I mean, we've said it so many times, we keep coming back to it, like how his first 2 seasons he's finishing 8th both times, and then he's finishing 5th, and how many Arsenal supporters were looking for his head well into his tenure? And even at the beginning of last season, I'm talking about, they weren't great at the beginning of the season, and there was a lot of soundings from them, which is, that's the nature of football fans. It's nothing against their supporters, although I've got plenty of things against their supporters, but that's a separate issue. But so we've got to be brave, and we've got to back the guy. We've appointed somebody who fits the history of the club, fits the demand and the sort of appetite of the Spurs supporters for that kind of football. And there's bound when we don't have the personnel to execute it the way that in an ideal world at the level that he's now working at, then of course I think we're still, even if we do finish 5th, which at the moment is probably looking the most likely, because I mean, I hate to say it, but Villa are doing the business, and it's not gone whatsoever. But even if we finish 5th, that's massive progress to be doing that with the injuries that we've sustained, with obviously Kane's departure and so on. I just think that we've got to back him, we've got to trust the recruitment, and these things will come together. I mean, if you're being pragmatic and you think, okay, you've been watching football for decades, and it's something that all of us here obviously really care a lot about, and we love it, and we've got our own take on things. But most fans who wouldn't have the analysis or the experience that Dan would have, you watch a game and you think, you kind of sit in and you protect your defense a little bit more. You're a little bit more conservative in your approach to things. And you sort of think, well, that's just not how Ange plays football. And I do like the sort of stubborn side of things, that he is pretty immovable in terms of his philosophy. This is the way we're going to play. And the fact that, like, he said it many times in interviews, that you've got players who are sticking with what they're expected to do, regardless of sort of the overall match situation. Even going back to that first early game against Shakhtar, when he was raging about the goal that they conceded just on the end of the first half, like the way that the players weren't looking at the clock, and they weren't, they were thinking about the match situation rather than just like the moment that they're in. And he just wants the players to play the same way for 90 minutes, which is a wonderful philosophy if it works. And I'm ready to strap myself in and see what can happen. And so, like, I just think I'm not going to tell Postecoglou what to do. We have our own opinions, but he's been successful wherever he's gone. We've got kind of the infrastructure in place in terms of the recruitment side of things now. The club's getting its identity back. Well, there's always going to be miserable buggers supporting every team, so that's up to them if they want to take that way of looking at things. But personally, I love going to the stadium. I love watching us. I know it's very frustrating. There's lots of times when they've not played that well and so on. But it's still we've got a progression that's happening, and I just trust the manager to bring us potentially to the promised land. And I think I do think he's going to win us something. I don't know what's going to happen, but I really believe in what he's doing, and I'm in totally support it.
Do you know what I think it is, Johnny? Like we've all played Football Manager, right? I think most people listening probably have. You know, when you take over a new club, you know what your deadwood is, but you've got to have them on your bench anyway. But you start your new formation, they're not used to it. There's lots of orange dots around like comfortability and position. And then you're retraining people in various roles as well at the same time in double training sessions. We've got loads of orange dots, and Anne's got them on extra training to get them all bright green. And so I'm persisting with the guys that I'm building the team around, not with the guys I'm going to flog in the summer. And through that learning curve, you're like, I don't really care if I finish 8th, whatever the show, I just don't want to get sacked. So that next season, I'm going to just build this amazing, amazing team. I kind of feel like he's doing the approach of just getting who he wants to keep, familiar with what he wants to do. And as a result, the in-game management goes by the wayside. Sometimes you're like, yeah, but we really wanted to win. He's like, yeah, but I don't care if it's 4th or 5th. I want the team to go into next season better prepared to win the whole thing.
Just one small thing, I guess, to add. Tottenham have scored 65 goals this season, which puts us in 6th in the Premier League in terms of goals scored. And Tottenham have conceded 49 goals this season, which puts us 6th in the Premier League. So, like, realistically, our defense kind of looks bad. Kind of is also because, like, that's a little bit by design. We're set up to allow, like, chances from the counter, and we have players that are very well equipped to handle that counter. So yeah, we're going to concede more XG than like the average team because we're going to allow a lot of shots, but a lot of those shots are ones that, even if they're high on the XG charts, they're ones that I would expect Vicario to make, like saves I would expect Vicario to make. Sometimes a team's just going to get lucky, like that Fulham game where we're going to lose games like that sometimes because you're going to have a ball go in off a shin, and like that's just going to happen sometimes with the way that Ange plays. But if like you look at the numbers, if you take like a step back and look at how we've performed over the course of the entire season, it's not as big of like a warning sign as it kind of feels like because we just lost 4-0. It's we're doing fine. We're on the right track.
Well, compared to the collapses we had under Conte and Jose, we've not really had collapses. We've lost a few games, and it looks a bit terrifying because we're up on the halfway line with 2 players and everyone's gone forward. So it does look terrifying, but it is fun to watch. It is good to watch. Like I said, the only thing I do stand by is I would like to see more tweaks by him, but then I also agree with your point, Jim. Why would he bring, let's say, Emerson on for Porro if Emerson's not going to be part of the plans next season? So Porro, you stay there, you learn, and you take the blows, and you learn that role. But then again, on that note, he doesn't rotate the midfield often enough. When we have players sitting on the bench, he doesn't bring the Sarr might not come on for a long while, or even Bazuma might not come back on. Decky doesn't drop back into that position. Even with the front three, if Werner can't make his runs because he can't get forward, because, Werner needs space to run into. He's not the tricky little player. He's going to go win his one-on-ones. He needs that space to run into. And if he hasn't got that, he's out the game, essentially. But then he doesn't replace him. He doesn't do anything. It's the only frustrating thing. We've got 16, 17 players. They're easily going to go through next season, easily. So there's probably 4 or 5 of those on the bench every single week, regardless, whoever, depending on whoever's injured. Those players could easily popping in now, could rotate the formation, the front starting 11. That's the only thing. But we are only 36 games into the Premier League with Ange and 34 games with Ange, and that's it. When you really think about it, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. If we're still having this conversation next year, this time next season, saying, he's no plan B, he's not changing anything, we're falling apart, then it's a bit more alarming, because then he's had 1, 2, 3 windows by this point, 2 seasons to really bed the philosophy in and the system in. And if it's still not embedded in, then there's questions to be asked. But I don't think we're ready to ask those questions yet. Same as we can't compare to your Arteta, your Klopp, your Pep yet, because they've had that time to instill the systems and the fluidity. We've just not had that time yet.
Yeah. Cool. Unless there's any final comments, guys, I think we're going to wrap up there with an Up the Spurs, and we'll be back. Oh, actually, there's one thing I was going to ask. To our 30% who stay to the end of every episode, listen to the end, need a massive favour from you all. We don't charge for any, we don't do Patreon or any of those paywall things, but can you help us pass the pod forward onto someone else? So if you listen to it on audio, or listen to it on YouTube, can you just pop it in a little Spurs WhatsApp group that you're in or something like that? Just help us spread the word of the podcast. That would be the kindest thing you could do. Or if you're not up for that, just chuck us a 5-star review at the end, or like the video, whatever's best. But thank you very much. And Arsenal preview probably on Friday, but we'll discuss that between us on here. And look forward to your questions for that show. So up Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.
Go on, you Spurs.